Good morning, comrades. You are listening to WHIVLP New Orleans 102.3. This is Good Morning, Comrade. Today on the show, we have a very special guest. We've already had Jacob from the Valley Labor Report on. Today, we have his partner in crime, David Story, also from the Valley Labor Report. He is also the president of the Machinists Union. What's the local number?
Local 44.
Local 44. Sorry about that. And he is joining us today. We're going to talk a little bit about unions in the South. We're going to talk about the striking workers at the Warrior Met coal mine out in central Alabama as well. How you doing today, David?
Wonderful. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, man. It's a pleasure to talk with you, man. It's really, really nice. And I'm a big fan of Valley Labor Report, which you can now listen to if you can find it on WHIV. Just kind of keep an ear open. But yeah, really appreciate the work that y'all are doing. And there was a really great video that you put out the other day, or probably about a week or so ago, about your story, starting with like getting involved with your union. Can you just sort of like reset that a little bit?
Yeah, I didn't think it was that big of a deal, but Jacob, I think he just caught conversation one day and was like, "That's a wonderful story. You should tell that more often." And I'm like, "Okay," but yeah, I mean, I'm a third generation unionist in Alabama, so like, and every one of all of my family previously were from Alabama, so it's not like we imported from Detroit or something or other like that. So I've been brought up in a union family, the whole 9 yards. And I've always worked union, but I was just kind of like a dues payer. I paid my dues. I went to work. I went home, and enjoyed my time off. And when I came to work with this newest company, me and one of the negotiators, he was a previous president, got to be real good friends, like super close. And, he started telling me the story. I came to work, actually, they hired me as a strike breaker.
Wow.
The group that was there roughly not quite a year before I was hired in was about to negotiate a new contract. They had just come off of a 94, 95-day strike on the last contract. And so the company was basically flooding the bargaining unit, hoping that all the new hires would vote yes on the contract, which of course didn't work. But so, talking to him and listening about why they went on that 94-day strike, and what really stood out to me was they had retiree health care. So in other words, if you aged out, if you wanted to retire, if you got 30 years in, I think it's 30, maybe it's 20, before your Social Security age, you could bridge your health care, keep your health care until Medicare kicked in. And so they had that. It was already in the contract, but the company was wanting to remove it for anybody that hired in from that contract date forward. And they were going to be grandfathered in. And they struck 94 days with, for me that they had never even seen before, never met, didn't know nothing about me. And I just thought, man, that's, I mean, even though I walked picket lines with my dad, and I knew we were out there for the collective good,
Yeah.
but it never occurred to me the long term that they were looking at, and that's kind of when I say, you know what, I want to get involved. So yeah. And
Awesome.
then plus he was wanting to get out of the negotiating committee, and he wanted somebody that had been around unions a lot to get in there, because in our area you get a lot of people, and they'll join because they know the pay and benefits are the best in the area. But in many cases, they're not the best ones to be negotiating a contract. So he had kind of pushed me into taking over negotiating a contract, or to get elected to negotiate the contract. So
Yeah, so somebody that is going to be that's got an analysis of the situation, right? Somebody
yeah,
that and it's not to say anything wrong about folks that are just working the job to survive. That's totally fine. But I mean, like when you want to have those kind of jobs done, you want to make sure that people that are going to do it are going to have be able to advocate for it. They have some sort of familiarity and support
yeah,
network in there. 100%.
yep, yeah,
Go ahead.
and really, you get a lot that you want the best interest of the collective, because that at the end of the day, that's what it's about is the collective as a group, and not personal
And
goals.
yeah. So, and then you made your way up to president. I've been meaning to ask this question, and I kind of like throw this out a lot to like, especially people in the South. But like, what is it like, just sort of in the grand scheme of things, being a union leader in the South? Because it's different here. Like, it's not like different in the sense that like the forces are different in terms of like the bosses are going to try and screw over the workers at every possible opportunity. That's everywhere. But the rules we have to sort of operate under and the sort of like attitudes that exist around here are at least a little bit different. I mean, I lived here my entire life, and you know I'm from like a suburb of New Orleans, St. Bernard Parish, and that's where a lot of the sort of like working class folks are from. But like, if you're not in like sort of circles that union people are already in, then you don't really even see what's going on. You don't even have an awareness of
Right.
that. So I guess sort of like just generally talk about being like now, I guess, a union leader in the South.
Yeah. Well, for one, and it's a continual. Have to remind myself anytime somebody calls me a union leader, I always default back to I, I'm I, I'm very much an anarchist. So hierarchy, I absolutely hate, I abhor. Uh, the idea of leaders. But that being said, most people categorize the president as a leader, and I kind of categorize him as the president's just a guy that runs a union meet and fulfills the wishes of the membership. That's my only role, is when somebody gets a motion passed through a union meeting, then my job is to ensure that that motion is carried out to the best of my ability. So I kind of default back to the leadership comes out of the active membership, and I'm just the average Joe that's doing what they told me to do.
Yeah.
No more than I would do at my job. So, but I don't know. I don't see it. It's
Okay.
I don't have anything to compare it to because I've never worked like up north. Well, I have worked up north, but not in a capacity as a, a, an officer.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean it's strange because you get called union thug by, like, on our radio show, the program manager. He's reactionary, right wing. I mean, just the worst of the worst type people. And he's constantly demeaning the union. But to his defense, if there is a defense for that, it's because of his ignorance. It's because he's listened to so much propaganda, and he's never actually been in the circle, that he don't even understand what's going on. So
Mhm. Yeah. Jacob, your partner in crime, is in the chat saying David is a very open book insofar as that he's willing to talk about, but not forthcoming about it. I knew him for literal years before I knew he lived in Mexico and Germany and speaks the languages.
yeah. I try to come off as a dumb, ignorant redneck. I feel like I get the less people expect out of me, then the easier it is on me.
Oh, keep expectations nice and low.
Yeah.
You can always surprise people, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I really appreciate the frame you sort of put around what you see your role is as a union leader, because you know that's not the way that everybody sort of seems to see it that are in those kinds of positions. And like I personally, and I think that I'm vindicated in a lot of history that the way that unions have historically in the United States and abroad have been able to demonstrate power has been by having the members have some kind of ability to engage with the structures of that union and push forward in the same direction.
Yeah.
you know and it's not always as nice of a relationship, but it kind of it has to happen.
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite quotes, and I'll paraphrase it because I'm not a great uh, I don't have a great memory, but Eugene Debs at one point said something to the effect of, if you're looking for somebody to lead you out of the wilderness, I'm not that guy, because if I can lead you out of the wilderness, then somebody else can lead you back in, you
Right.
know. And I just thought, yeah, I mean, the intent is for not to have a leader, to have everybody kind of come together collectively and do what's best for the group and move forward as a group. And that, that builds a lot of the, and I'm a hierarchical antagonist. My business rep hates me. Most of the folks above my level, they respect the position, but they don't like the person, because I, I want to take the power out of the hands of the bureaucratic union, and because when you get to the point with unions where you've got this one guy that everybody thinks can come in and solve your problem, we're just in a total cluster at that point.
Hmm.
The only problems that should be solved by the collective. They should be able to demand what they want and not have to rely on one person. So
Yeah, and not to like hammer the point home too hard on this, but like we were talking a little bit about some of the woes that I've been sort of
yeah,
experiencing in my own sort of like organizing situation, and like I don't know, the people that are like in those positions, and then the people that are in leadership of my local, or have a different outlook than you do, and it's really this is something that I find really interesting and difficult to like talk about that dynamic without like coming off as anti-union, which is like sometimes let me sort of like give a sort of a sloppy example, and I brought this up to Jacob as well. If you remember, I was a big Bernie guy. You probably see him over my shoulder here, right, in 2016 and 2020. But I remember when Local 337 in the Culinary Union in Las Vegas sort of
yeah,
like did their soft endorsement of Biden, and I actually put out a tweet. I said, I can't wait to like talk trash about 337 in my circle of union people, and then defend them to the death to the people that are like more broadly, essentially. It's like a
yeah.
really kind of difficult, like changing of dynamics.
Hmm. Yeah, I was impressed because in 2016, and full disclosure, even though I'm not a big political fan, I was a tremendous Bernie supporter, just because I kind of see myself as, although I may be an anarchist, my privilege, being white, being male, being a union worker, if I allow you know crap politicians to get elected, then that's pretty much just showing my privilege. And so I kind
Right.
of participate. But in 2016, uh, the executive council from our international made the endorsement for our union, and they caught so much hell because, and that's the way it's always been. It's not like anything had changed, but there were so many people in our international mad because we wanted to endorse Bernie, that at the next constitutional convention we actually amended the Constitution to where it's a Democratic vote nationwide for who we endorse.
That's an
And
awesome development.
yeah, and there was the president at the time understood that there was so much pushback on this that he endorsed the amendment, and so we got a Democratic vote, and it was expensive, but and Biden still won the endorsement on in 2020. But you know what? It was a fair way of handling things.
Yeah, it
So
some legitimacy in the process at the very least. Yeah,
mhm.
no, 100% agree with that. Like at least like having, and like I'm not a process geek either, but like at least you can like look at that and say, okay, we had a crack at this and we lost a fair fight or a fairish fight, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, you go back and look at 2016, and you look at 2020, which some of it I'm sure is Trump's actions that caused this loss, but uh, I would like to think that maybe out of that process of in my union seeing that loss and then recognizing that, hey, if we've got 600,000 members, if we don't allow them to have a voice, are they actually going to go out and vote for who that we think they should vote for, or who that their peers think that they should vote for? And I think it was a learning lesson for a lot of the supposed leadership in our union at the higher levels.
Yeah, and I actually want to sort of continue with one more point, but really quick, I want to pause for station ID. You are listening to WHIVLP New Orleans 102.3. This is Good Morning Comrade. We are joined by David Story. You can follow him on Twitter at Radical Unionist. That is RADICL Unionist. He is one of the hosts of the Valley Labor Report, a fantastic program that you can listen to on WHIV. You can also check out their YouTube page to get more information. Really, really great program. And I think about this as well, like this sort of like, there's this big question, and that kind of came up, and it was like, why are all of these union locals and rank and file members of unions like going for Trump it was in 2016 mostly, but it also happened in 2020. And I think like part of what the reasoning for that, and I'm not like, I haven't studied this extensively, so this is kind of like more of amusing or anything, but I almost kind of think it's a reaction to some of that more like high-handed seems like a little bit harsh of a term to use, but like this sort of like, we know what's best for you kind of approach, which like I actually take in many of those situations in good faith that maybe that's true, right? Maybe they do think that they know what's best for the union members, but they also they can't just tell people that. It needs to
Mm-hmm.
be agreed upon. And essentially, like, when a decision is made for you, when a decision is made for me, at least, I'm just sort of like, what? No, I want to do the opposite of that.
Yeah, no, I get it completely, and I get it working at the level that I work at as well, because a lot of times I feel I'm torn. You're sitting there going, what's in the best interest right now of the membership? So, and also working with the higher levels, I see, hey, there's not always time to do things the way that the perfect in the perfect setting. So you just try to make the best decision you can and move on. But yeah, but when there is that possibility that we should, and like you said, to circle back, I'm not being anti-union,
No, no,
and
no,
and
no.
I don't think, but I think the reason that we've had such a decline in the U.S. is because everybody expects the union, not me, not us, but some guy in Maryland or some guy in D.C. to to uh, to be the white savior, on the white horse, and come in and
They
and
want the
so
Deus Ex Machina, the ending.
yeah, yeah, exactly, and I think that's the reason for the decline, because there is no person on the white horse that's going to ride in to save you. So to build that back up, I think we need to put the power back in the hands of the rank and file membership.
Yeah. Yeah, 100% agree, and like that's not anti-union at all. I mean, That's like literally the lifeblood
Yeah.
of any sort of, and democratic organization and labor organization. You need to be able to get members to all go in the same way, and you cannot just do that by telling them that they have to do the thing that you're telling them to do, because if they don't have any buy-in, if they don't have any reason to kind of go along with that, then they won't, essentially.
Yeah. Well, and look,
Or they just do their job, or shut up.
Yeah, and the membership's not stupid. Be it growing up, through the '80s, through the '90s, and watching NAFTA come in, and watching, the era of neoliberalism where we continually voted for Democratic neoliberals such as Bill Clinton, and Obama to a large extent, possibly even worse, even though nobody wants to. He is a nice guy, the same as Bill Clinton, but
very charming neoliberal, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's easy to like both of those folks, but they were absolutely terrible for the working class, and yet all of our unions wholeheartedly supported them and still defends them to the day. And the membership is not stupid. They've seen the jobs going overseas. They've seen, the competition with slave labor in many countries, and you know, they were looking for change. And unfortunately, we elected a moron, but you got change. It just wasn't what he promised.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I do want to switch gears a little bit and talk about some of the things that are going on in Alabama, because I didn't expect Alabama to have so much things going on. And this is something that's like the attention on one issue, and it is like way more than needs to happen. And then the attention, and myself is implicated in this. I'm talking about the Amazon drive. And then the other one is the Warrior Met union coal miner strike that's happening right now, which is getting no coverage. But anyway, just to go first with Amazon, just because I guess that was the order that things happened. We talked a little bit about this before we went on air as well. That sounded like an absolute whirlwind of press, people from out of town, out of Alabama, kind of coming in and putting a big old spotlight on a situation that that really kind of ended up being fairly difficult.
Yeah. Where anywhere else it would have been just another normal day in the life. So I mean, and I and our show was as responsible for that as anybody else.
How could you, it is when you and nobody's even to blame. Nothing even happened. Nothing is necessarily even wrong there, but it's just what happened. There was a lot of energy and excitement, which isn't a bad thing.
Yeah, and yeah, to your point, there was, and I was happy, and I'm still happy because for years Alabama has, kind of been, or all of us in the South have been the butt of the joke when it comes to unionism. Even though we're not that much farther behind a lot of the other states as far as union density per capita goes.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's Amazon, so you expect some coverage, but then, of course, when you couple that with it's Amazon in Alabama and Bessemer, a predominantly minority city, it was just a perfect storm for media coverage, and it was a feeding frenzy. Everybody was down here, and I enjoyed it wholeheartedly. I was glad that we got the coverage, and I hope, moving forward that we continue to get that kind of coverage and maybe a little bit more resources spent in the South on organizing as opposed to consistently organizing the Northeast or the West, and just saying and writing the Southern states off as they're unorganizable, because I don't think that's the case at all.
Oh, absolutely not. It's absolutely not the case. We just need to, we do definitely need the tools to do the job 100%. And we need the people here. But yeah, I mean, I look at, a lot of situations, and I got, a lot of respect for the folks on the in Orleans area. However, like, I mean, I look on, I mean, I'm like one of these trolls. I'm always looking at the union jobs in the area, and you can't find one. You can't organize your jobs, and it means that there's not a whole lot of, I mean, at least as far as I can tell, not a whole lot of money being spent, at least internationally, down here. Now, one of the things that, and I don't know if this is like me, like doing the copium thing, but like that big spotlight that was on Bessemer, a month ago, like part of that also, like that was in that spotlight was like how much Amazon like basically looked at all the things are illegal and just use that not as a like not as like, oh, let's not do this. They use that more like a roadmap to how that they would approach like that union drive. And I guess maybe sort of like one of the things that we can sort of take away from it is, hey, in terms of like seeing the L happen on the big stage in 4K, we also saw, like, putting it in wrestling terms, we saw the cheater heel bad guy like use all of the brass knuckles in the chair and like beat up the referee in order to win.
Yeah. I mean, and that, but that really kind of speaks to the, because the spotlight was on it, then everybody saw it. But the fact is, all the organizing campaigns that happen go through the exact same thing. And case in point, I was organizing a group that had it was a Swiss company that had moved in here in our area, and it was brand new. We were going through a layoff at our facility at the time, so about 75 to 80% of the workers that went to work over there were actually union members from my local. So it was an easy win. I started calling everybody and saying, "Hey, let's get you organized. We'll get a contract negotiated." And there was roughly 50 people at the time. Mm-hmm. We got 49 authorization cards, is what you sign to say, hey, I want union representation. We got 49 of 50 authorization cards signed. So there was, tremendous support. Up to the election, the week before, the company came in and told them, the few $100s a month that you're paying for health care insurance, you won't have to pay that no more. Don't worry about it. And it's completely illegal. And we could have filed a board charge and said, they influenced the election by offering a benefit. But then you're in a catch-22 because you say, okay, the workers won something by standing collectively together, and now the union, once again, is going to come in and take that away. So
it's gonna make you look bad.
Yeah, and so that that's nothing new what Amazon done. It just so happened that everybody got to see it at a national level at that point.
And you take that W. I mean, if you get more benefits out of that, that is a better thing than not having that benefit. That is and to your point, like sort of like positioning yourself as saying, like, you got to be very nuanced in order to deal with that, right? You have to say, like, this is a good development and this shows what we can do when we stand together and our, collective power and all that. Also, it's illegal. It's very difficult to have a nuanced statement on it.
Yeah. You have to handle it. You have to handle it with some humility and say, hey, y'all won this. Good for y'all. We lost the election. We lost the election by 3 votes after getting 49 of 58 cards signed. But now we're talking to them again over the last 6 months. This has been about 2 years since that election occurred. So, but you don't close the door on it.
You lost the union, but you won healthcare, though, right?
Yeah, well, they won healthcare, exactly, and maybe in the back of their mind they realized that it wasn't the union that got their health care. It was them standing together collectively, which is another important lesson to take away from it.
Yep. 100%. You are listening to WHIVLP New Orleans 102.3. This is Good Morning Comrade. For more information about our show, goodmorningcomrade.com. We have on the show today a very special guest. We have David Story from the Valley Labor Report. He is the president of the Local Machinists Union as well. He actually, so I did want to sort of change gears. So we just talked about the extremely hyper covered Amazon union election that took place in Bessemer up in the north. And now I want to sort of like change gears and talk about something that's going on right now. For the past 7 weeks, some coal miners in central Alabama have been on strike. Can you talk a little bit about what's going on down there? We talked a little bit about it on the show, but and we talked about it with Jacob as well. But can you just sort of set the table for what's going on out there?
Yeah. So, and I'll be completely upfront. I'm not very well versed in everything. I
Sure.
know a lot of the highlights. In 2016, 2015, 2016, a former the employer that owned the mines at the time, Jim Walter Energy, had run the business into the ground and bankrupted.
Mm-hmm.
And as a condition of this Capital Venture Group coming in and purchasing the mines, they wanted to negotiate a better contract with the workers, and so the workers were kind of had their backs up against the wall and took a very a lot of concessions. I think the average wage decrease in 2016 was $6 an hour, pay cuts. Some of the guys that I talked to, the electricians that were in there, actually were closer to $8 an hour pay cuts, which I mean is insane. Nobody can. I don't know how anybody can take that kind of. You build your lifestyle around a certain wage that you're expecting, and then all of a sudden you're making $240 a week less. That's crazy. But so they took those concessions. They accepted them and said, with the thought that, hey, we'll do everything we can to get you sustainable again. We'll work our tail off. 2 of the previous 5 years under this new contract where they had taken concessions, they had record coal removal from the mines. And that's in like the 80 some odd year history of that mine. And they done it with 700 less people. So when that in 2016 they had roughly 1,800 members. Now they got 1,100 members. And then they expected to come into 2021 and negotiate a new contract with a company where they're paying supervisors $30,000 a quarter bonuses to yes, $30,000 a quarter bonuses. They kind of expected, hey, let's get back up to where we were. If and what they were simply asking for is get our wages back to regional rates, which anybody knows regional rates in Alabama is terrible. Excuse me, terrible by anybody else's standards, but it's fair for the region. And the company said, no. And on top of that, we want you to take a cut in your health care insurance and we want you to pay a little bit more. I apologize.
Quite all right.
So, yeah, so they amazingly, they went on strike. And, to hear everybody talk about it, it's been one of the largest mine worker strikes since the 80s. And they're still out there. And they're out there, importantly, I think for me, what's been the most beautiful takeaway, and the strike, don't get me wrong, is terrible. We were on strike on our last contract 3 years ago. But the beautiful thing to take away from it is they're out there with a large number of young workforce that have never been in a union, didn't have any clue about a union. They, but they're committed to seeing things through,
Hmm.
and everybody was scared. Even the all the way up to the national president was worried, tried to cut a deal and get everybody back to work, hoping that he was worried about, are these members going to be able to hang tough, and they're in there doing it,
Good.
and we're in our seventh week now, and they're still saying we're not taking it.
Yeah.
So to I guess to bookend that, I'm doing, and Jacob is doing, and there's a lot of other people out there working as well to do everything we can, because when these strikes occur, it's so important for the labor movement to rally around those workers, because everybody, all of us know that the what the Republicans like to use a lot of times is rising tide raises all boats. Well, the rising tide is the striking workers.
Hmm.
They're the ones that's going to be increasing wages and benefits for everybody else in the area. So we need to make sure that we support them as long as they need to be supported. So,
Yeah. And like there's been some sort of crazy rulings and things like that about they can only have a certain number of people out at picket lines and all this other kind of stuff. It's absolutely wild how that's going down. um I do want to sort of like ask about what things are like. I don't know if you've been out to the lines, anything like that, if you've talked to any of the workers out there. What's kind of the mood? How are people feeling? Is it, I mean, 7 weeks is a long time to be out of work.
yep. I have not been out there in about 3 to 4 weeks. Well, maybe less than that, 2 to 3 weeks. Our local took up a large donation and went out there a few weeks ago. Uh, I mean, and the workers are they're pissed. I
Hmm.
mean, rightfully so. The ones that I talked to, and like you said, they're only allowing 11 per picket, and I
That's
think there's
insanity to me. That part's insanity to me. Like,
that's.
seriously.
I mean, it's typical. The company it is exactly like what you would think of in the early 1900s, where they're not paying for their groceries in company script, but they may as well be,
Yeah. The
because
thing that's missing is the Pinkertons, right?
yeah. Well, and the Pinkertons are the state police.
Yeah.
They've brought in the state police. I was out there the night that they announced the strike. I drove down the next morning to walk the picket lines with them, and already there was two state troopers on the picket line that I was on, and we were blockading some equipment from leaving the facility. And man, that state trooper, he didn't put his hand on his gun, but that was the only thing, the only non-reactionary thing that he didn't do, because he come out screaming and yelling, telling us he was going to take us to jail, the whole 9 yards. So, yeah, there's your Pinkerton right there.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Yeah,
they're sticking together strong.
which they always have been state sanctioned, but I mean,
Mm.
like officially deputized by the state.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's the case in Alabama. In the early 80s. I want to say it's either 79 or 80. My dad went on strike at one of the paper mills up here, and there was uh, there it's ill. I think, don't quote me on this, but I believe that at some point in time the governor or maybe the federal government made it illegal to call in the National Guard, so the governor started using the state patrol. But
Mm.
they had sent out the state patrol for my dad's picket then, and there was some serious fights. I mean, luckily nobody got killed at the time, but I mean, nowadays you would certainly get killed by the police for doing what they were doing then.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean this has been going on in the South for years. The
Yeah.
the state mandated police are going to do everything they can to protect capital.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And we should let me just pause real quick for station ID one quick time, because I do want to kind of get into this particular issue of like history and of labor, not just in the South, but like more broadly, but like the sort of portrayal around it. But before we get to that, you are listening to WHIV LP New Orleans 102.3. This is Good Morning Comrade, goodmorningcomrade.com, and get more information. We have David Story on the show. Been a fantastic show so far. Always great to talk with you, David. He is the host, one of the hosts of the Valley Labor Report, which you can listen to here on WHIV. You can also listen to what's the station again?
Our station, the radio station, is WVNN 92.5 FM.
Yeah,
but it's a terrible station.
Yeah, only listen to the Valley Labor Report on there. Which comes on Saturday mornings, I believe at 9 o'clock,
9:30 a.m. Yep.
And you can also check out their YouTube channel to get more information as well. Fantastic show. He's also the president of the local machinists union. And I kind of like wanted to talk about, so let me sort of set this stage a little bit. We just talked about some of the history of a paper mill strike that got busted up by the cops in Alabama. I was on a call with some people. We were talking about the PRO Act, and we had a little section on there about Louisiana history. And like, I knew the story, but not very many other people do, and it was totally mystified. We had a guy who's a historian. We got to get him on the show. His name is Thomas Adams. Great dude. But he talked about a strike out in Geismar about by workers with the it's essentially with the steel workers now, but the strike that went on for years and years, like in the 80s and into the 90s, and nobody knows about it. Nobody knows about the labor history of the place that they live. It gets buried, or it gets portrayed as like the comic portrayal of like Jimmy Hoffa or whatever being a corrupt, and like I'm not going to defend every action of Jimmy Hoffa, I suppose, but like the idea of that being the like primary image of like labor as sort of corruption of things is sort of the way that things go forward. And in the South, there's just nothing. They don't really talk about the battles of Blair Mountain, even in like West Virginia, in any way other than you need to get like second year of college just to even get that information. It's really wild,
Yeah. We've talked to several educators on the show, and it's disappointing that labor history is not covered more. In the primary school level. I'd love to see it, but it kind of bears out the point of why we should be doing what we're doing, because no one is going to tell our story if it's not for us.
And they are amazing stories, like absolutely incredible stuff. I mean, in every single state, every single city has something.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I don't get it. I don't get it. I talked to Kenzo, one of our mutual friends on the show. I've talked to Brendan Muckey and Bates. He was one of the organizers for Red for Ed in West Virginia when they went on their Wildcat. And I've asked everybody, what is the problem? And it all goes back to the same thing, because capital owns the education system, and they're not going to allow people to be taught that collectively they have any power. They want us relying on capitalists and politicians, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. It just totally sets the table for history kind of like has this mystifying effect, I guess you could say, especially if you don't study it, where like you can sort of like look at it in a very sort of like basically the way that it gets portrayed to you and come away with the conclusions of whoever it is that's putting that story before you, and a lot of times, especially because geez, I didn't expect to get into this today, but you look at you go to your local bookstore, if any of them still exist, and it's like a corporate bookstore like Barnes and Nobles or whatever, you'll see history books written by like high profile Fox News people like Brian Kilmeade and like Bill O'Reilly. And I remember they also had like a Rush Limbaugh series of book. I teach elementary school, right? A Rush Limbaugh series of children's books that they essentially get the people, and it's just absolutely wild, the fact that and obviously they're going to portray the facts that they choose to kind of have to essentially justify their pre-existing worldview, the right-wing worldview.
And it's interesting. Like you, I didn't expect to go down this path, but I'm always happy to talk about it. It's I growing up on Rage Against the Machine and Public Enemy and things like that, I heard, but my whole life is music. It's just, if I didn't have music, I'd literally died tomorrow. But I heard all of these lyrics, and then, as a young, impressionable high school kid, and but I also heard everything, through the eyes of the history teacher or the mouth of the history teacher, and had this strange patriotism that's kind of pushed on you through those very primary influential years. But then, maybe in my late 20s, early 30s, I was recommended The History of America by Howard Zinn.
Oh yeah.
And when I read that, and then reflecting back on all of the music that I had listened to, and reflecting back on kind of the indoctrination that we all go through school.
Yeah, it's like you found that one puzzle piece, right?
It was 180 degrees. It was like, what the hell? What the hell have they been telling us? Nothing's true. Everything is manipulated, and it's like, and so to your point, it's almost unbelievable, even at 50, 49, that that we're so easily manipulated by what they tell us that they want us to know, what they want us to believe.
Yeah, it really is wild. And I'm on. I'm like thinking right now, and I'm kind of. So somebody explain Rage Against the Machine lyrics to my to any conservative that listens to them. Yeah, that's really funny too, because I remember in I think it was 2016. Oh no, it was 2012. I got a long memory for these things, but when Paul Ryan was running for vice president with Mitt Romney, he got asked the question what's your favorite band, and this dude is like the biggest stick in the mud turd that you ever saw in your entire life, and he's like, yeah, I look Rage Against the Machine. It's like, what are you talking about, dude?
I know it, man. and it really pisses me off. It irritates me to no end, because I come away from Rage Against the Machine a completely different person.
Right.
That I between them, Public Enemy, there was a few other punk bands, but they changed my perspective on life, and it, because I listened to them. But apparently these folks have just never listened to the words of what they were singing. Yeah,
or probably more nefariously, they're just trying to co-opt this literally communist message of Rage Against the Machine. Literally, Tom Morello is an IWW member and has been super awesome on a lot of these issues. And Tom Morello, come on, Good Morning Comrade, please. That would be sick. But anyway, taking this very, very clearly like anti-capitalist messaging and just trying to co-opt it. Like that will never end. That I'll never not be fascinated by that, by this sort of like blob of like co-option to sort of like bring in the most radical elements of like essentially, I wouldn't even call it like anti-establishment, because it is like anti-establishment implies a reaction to establishment, but this is more of a clear delineated line of thinking, a clear delineated perspective, and just trying to assume that into the mass culture. Like that's fascinating to me.
Yeah, and you're seeing a tremendous resurgence. You're seeing in the past several years, I think coupled with what the rank and file traditional GOP seen Trump do, and they're also seeing their base slowly moving back away from them. You're seeing that type of populist talking points of anti big corporation and the things that for the last since Reagan they've been known for, supporting all these corporate oligarchs. Now all of a sudden you're seeing people like Ted Cruz and like the guy up in Michigan talk about blue collar working class people and all of this. So you're seeing
these like Harvard like law school graduates who have never worn like boots in their life. They've never gotten a callus on their hand, and they've never hammered in a freaking nail. They're trying to talk about the working class.
Yeah, but the thing is, the working class, and I'm not demeaning anybody, but I'm telling it the way I see it. And if it hurts your feelings, I apologize. But the working class are a gullible group, and they will buy into a lot of what they're hearing if they hear it long enough. And I think that's why it's important for us to push back and say, look, you need to look at history. You need to look at especially his history. And what more importantly is the legislation that he's pushed through. Has it been beneficial to you or has it not?
Yeah. And they never talk about that.
No, of course not.
It's always about like the next thing. The cancel culture is ruining our society, which like it's all like kind of way true, right? But we worried about people who are getting like smeared for doing good things, not smeared for like like people who are like losing their job for speaking truth to power or whatever. That's like the real cancel culture, as opposed to like Barry Weiss and Ben Shapiro complaining in their best-selling books about being canceled.
Yeah, well, I mean, all we've heard for this is May for the last 3 months is cancel culture up until last week when Liz Cheney gets booted out of her position. So I mean, I don't know. It's crazy. The whole cancel culture thing is just democracy at work. If they don't like it, change your policies.
Yeah. And Robert, Top Damage Wizard, one of my co-hosts, brings up, remember when they got arrested with Michael Moore on Wall Street, and that was the whole music video. Bulls on Parade, absolutely incredible song.
It is. Yeah, I could do 10 episodes on just Rage Against the Machine. So
go ahead and talk about Rage a little bit. Taste of that for when you come back on.
Yeah, I mean, it's they're great, and I would love to see Morello come on your show. I've maybe one day.
Yeah, your show.
I've hit him up numerous times. I've tagged him. I mean, I'm sure everybody else is as well. But I mean, they do good work. They do, And the funny thing is Morello is like, I didn't even realize this up until a year and a half ago, but he is like amazingly well educated. He's not your run of the mill angst rocker. The guy's like gotten serious degrees, so he's not an idiot.
Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, regardless of the degrees, even like he's got a very clear analysis of what he's trying to put forward, and that's really cool to me.
Yeah, and of course he supports an IWW member, which I'm an IWW member as well, and I think you see that amongst the more radical elements of unionists is their quest to bring back that international solidarity and that build that rank and file power that the IWW does so well. I mean, they're really, really good at boiling it down to non-bureaucratic unionism.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. So, as we sort of wind down in our time, we're coming up to the top of the hour. Can you just one more time just talk a little bit about Valley Labor Report? Where can people find about the show, and can you just talk about the fundraiser that's happening next week, the 27th?
yeah, so I'll hit the fundraiser first because to me that's the most important. Uh, so yeah, we're doing the fundraiser for the mine workers in Brookwood, Alabama, and Jacob has like spearheaded this fundraiser and has brought in some of the most amazing musicians, Lee Baines and the Glory Fires, Mike Cooley from Drive By Truckers. Uh, man, I'm gonna miss some people. Drew Morgan from Well Read Comedy Tour. There's just, and I think Lee helped on a lot of that as well. But it all in coordination for, like we were talking about earlier, to come out and raise money to keep these mine workers on strike as long as they feel like they need to be on strike, and that's happening next Saturday, the 22nd, and the Valley Labor Report. Myself and Jacob and our newest member, Adam Keller, will be uh, ignorantly, I've been uh, strong armed into a 48-hour live stream to support this. So we'll be going on the air on Friday, I believe roughly around between 10 and noon. But I reached out to Randy Bryce is going to be.
Oh my god!
Uh, yeah, no, I couldn't believe it. I reached out to Randy because
Iron Stash.
yeah, the Iron Stash. Because we're on a private radio, we have to raise money to pay for airtime. And the iron workers were like one of the early, we got some real radical iron workers in Sheffield. We're one of the early supporters and most ardent supporters of our show. And and I felt like, hey, let's bring an iron worker on it. So Jacob said, reach out to Randy, and I'm like, okay. And within like 30 minutes, he replied back and said, yeah, I'll do whatever it takes to help
That's
those
incredible.
workers
I
out.
love it.
Yeah. So Randy's going to be on. Kim Kelly, everybody's favorite labor reporters. She's flying in to cover it. I think I talked to her yesterday, and she said she was actually able to pick up a gig with Rolling Stone. So she's going to be doing some writing for Rolling Stone for that. I've got some good friends. My brother Douglas Williams, he's an educator at our labor college. He's coming in, and an editor with Strikewave.
I know Brian too.
Yep, Brian's coming in. It's going to be just uh, coming out of COVID and not being able to see live bands and kind of being isolated for the last year, and then this all culminating around the workers there and the great music and great friends. It's just I'm so excited for
Mhm.
this. I can't even put it into words.
Yeah.
Just but yeah, you can find the Valley Labor Report on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook. If you just search the Valley Labor Report, we're there, and we're pretty much just talking about rank and file unionism, anti-capitalism. Uh, and we try to keep it local, but we do branch out a
Mhm.
lot of times into the national and international level. Jacob done a wonderful series on Bolivia and the Moss about 6 months ago. So there's a lot for everybody to kind of see.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on GMC, David. You are listening to WHIV LP New Orleans. This has been Good Morning Comrade. Love you. Goodbye.